Let's talk about the Final Fantasy XIV healer strike. What the? Okay, so I watched a video on this and I was pretty confused. There's just a lot of dynamics here that are going on. But as far as I can tell, especially this post was very helpful. But especially after reading through this, like, the manifesto is going to be really helpful here. But essentially, there has been recent content released, or not released yet. It's still on its media tour, which is kind of a new concept for me, but apparently a very old concept for Final Fantasy XIV. One of the major streamers took on the newest dungeon. This is going to be accessible through main story, so I have some opinions here. This is going to be accessible through main story. Did it all without a healer, by playing the tank role incredibly well. And there's a couple of things here. One thing is that they were using heals. They just weren't using a healer. The heals that they actually used were pretty terrible in that, they were healing options for non-healer characters. But because of the other things that were going on, especially like the tanks, mitigations and all of that, they didn't really need the healer. The thing is, and this is the point that I've also heard in response to that most commonly, is this isn't a problem. This isn't a problem because that's one of the best players in the world, and this is main story content. So, we would expect a player this dedicated to be able to win with a lot of things that most other players wouldn't be able to replicate, and this is likely one of those scenarios. But in addition to that, this is a main story dungeon. It shouldn't necessarily be that hard. But let me read the manifesto here. Here are the issues. Self-sustained and healing abilities given to other roles. Oversimplified DPS rotation. It seems like they basically just have a filler offense skill, and from listening to this, it's probably an AoE skill. It feels like one of the things that healers actually do in this game at this point is spam AoEs, which is not what you would expect from a healer. Now you're suddenly a weird sort of support DPS. What the fuck is that? Homogenization of healer jobs. There's no individuality across the board as the healer of jobs, given the healer role to give them a sense of identity. Excessive OGCD heals. Not sure what to... Actually, you know what? It's about time. Let me Google it. Thanks. Global cooldown. Oh. Yep, that's an answer. Okay. So, I don't know. Look, as a not Final Fantasy XIV player, I'm not sure what off global cooldown. Oh, heals that you can use it literally anytime. So these are on other characters, so this kind of feeds back into this, like, okay. But I think this last one is probably one of the more important, and I've seen this from Square before, kind of. This really feels like what happened in FFBE for the most part. The only bosses or the only content in FFBE that I actually found to be at all challenging were the ones that I needed a spreadsheet to figure out what the boss was going to do next, and those were challenging for kind of the wrong reasons. But I think this is one of the bigger issues, and one of the things that's been mentioned by a lot of people. Like, let's move back to my earlier complaint or my earlier statement that, you know what, this dungeon shouldn't be this hard. You should be able to beat it without a healer, potentially, in that it is a main story dungeon that all players are going to want to get through that. Now, I say that because that's how these games usually work, but there should be more challenging content, like raids, etc. And there are. in this game that allow you to extend beyond that and play at the challenge level that you seek. In those places, I would imagine healers are still going to be very important. And I think that for most players and most groups and most anyone starting out in the game, you're going to want a healer for most stuff. I don't think that's a controversial statement, but I don't know. It could be. But it's... I don't know. It does feel like there are definitely times, and I've seen this happen in other games as well, where, you know, once other people are able to heal or mitigate damage or do a lot of things that just ensure their sustainability, people will drop healers. Now, when it's not an actual player playing each role in your party, when it's you playing the entire party, that doesn't hurt, that doesn't hit. I mean, sure, you feel bad you can't use Ayaka anymore, she's not optimal. That it's better to use a tank or just run all DPS or something. Like, this happens in War of the Visions and stuff as well. It hits a little different when you play that individual character, when it's a proper role-playing game where you are playing that specific role in an MMO setting. And yeah, I can see, like, as games like this go longer and longer, and new players are expecting to play the newest content at the newest high difficulty level, then they're going to have to streamline it to make you able to get into that at all times. And the longer a game goes on, and FF14 has been going on for quite some time, so 2010 technically, so 2013, so this game is 11 years old. This game is even older. So yeah, this tends to be an issue that can happen over time. You know, like, ways of building out tanks is giving them more sustainability. And the more sustainability they get, the more independent they are, and the less they need healers. The rest of the minutia here, because there's more to it than just this. This is the basic understanding. Actually, that subreddit post was interesting for its comments, even if the thing was... this rant here from FF14 discussion from 4 months ago, I think really gets into it, and gets into some different stuff. But there's definitely some moments in this that, like, have some relatable feelings here. Age-old mantras like the "only the last HP matters" and the green TBS have surely been something in the entire community has heard and practiced for years now. That's all well and good. There's certainly some wisdom in these statements, and I can only agree up to a point. I understand the nature of the game, how it's balanced around all jobs doing meaningful damage. No one debates this, not even me. But why is it now controversial to suggest that people want to play healers to, I don't know, heal? Sure, we have to deal damage, I get that. That's not where the joy of being a healer comes from, though. If I stand up 1,000 healer mains in a line, no less than 80 of them are going to tell me that their favorite moment was a super amazing clutch that they saved their group from imminent failure. So this person lists out some other issues for healers within the game. Healers are demonized for healing. Wow. There's some weird social dynamics in FF14, y'all. I just want to read this one out. This is kind of wild. In the case of White Mage, a good portion of your healing power budget, such as Medica 2 and Cure 3, are locked behind the global cooldown. And in a DPS-oriented game state, every global cooldown on a heal is a DPS spell lost. Ergo, don't heal unless it's at least DPS neutral. To be clear, I'm not saying that people are actively being told not to heal. The point merely refers to the idea or the mentality that's been fostered in the community where damage is more important than healing, and that it should be avoided like a plague in all but the most dire of situations. So I guess you're using your cooldown skills on DPS instead of healing, which, yeah, that sounds boring. I mean, at least from a healer perspective. Like, if you came to play a healer, yes. No one sees healers as healers. They're just utility DPS. And then, also, the problem is most people who are piloting a healer doing so with a DPS-focused mentality and are not actively conscious nor encouraged to care about their healing kit. Somehow it's become commonplace to invoke the amount of damage you deal as a metric by which we now determine a healer's competence. That's a completely ass-backwards assessment if you ask me, but yet here we are. And then getting into probably the more important of the 3 points, and the one that's mirrored in the other comment, and the one that I understand the best, there's simply nothing to heal. With the arrival of Endwalker came several changes, not least of which were extensions to kits of every job and several new fights. For the sake of not spoiling things, I'll keep this section and similar intentionally vague. Every non-dark DRK, I don't know, tank got a metric assload of self-sustain and some of the most broken mitigation tools anyone has ever seen in the history of the game. Can someone explain to me why a GMB has 900 potency X cog and 30% mitigation on a 25-second cooldown? That's pretty good mitigation. Or why Paladin has not one, but two 1000 potencies HOTs? I don't know. And gets 1600 potency of healing every 60 seconds. And don't get me started on Warrior, that job may as well be the main character. A bare minimum of 1600 potency of healing, 20 mitigation, and 400 potency shield on a 20-second cooldown. The values are doubled in the event that the warrior gives this buff to another player, benefiting both himself and the target ally simultaneously. Every 60 seconds they heal for 1200 potency up front and get another 1000 potency over the next 15 seconds. If there was any point in having healers in the game anymore, being as tanks are now effectively playing the game in creative mode and everyone else only cares about healer DPS, you may as well just remove the class and make everybody tanks and DPS, because there's nothing left to heal anymore, especially in dungeons. Which seems like absolutely why a top streamer would be trying to move into a meta with no healers at all. Again, I don't think that this is going to be a thing that most people are going to do. Healers are still required, and as much as people may have a DPS mentality about them, they are still going to need to heal you in a lot of cases. At the same time, these are real problems. I don't think healers are going away. So if that's your reason for healer striking, I think you might be missing it, but making healers more interesting by giving them more DPS and making tanks and warriors more interesting by giving them more ways to not need healers, yeah, it does actually start to feel like healer erasure at a point. And again, I'm not playing Final Fantasy XIV. This is just my outside perspective from some really long posts that I've seen from people who play healers in that game and some content that I've heard from it. Now, I've also heard another thing that I want to mention about this is I've heard people say that nobody cares, right? And that's an easy dismissal. I saw that all over the Reddit posts for this, all throughout the comments. But at the same time, the video that I saw about this, which wasn't fully on either side of it, I don't see a lot of FF14 content on my YouTube dashboard. This popped up, so clearly this idea is kind of popping off, whether or not you think it's popular or not, but it's probably best for people inside of the community to determine that, not me. I just think it's interesting that I'm seeing it from outside of the community, because that usually doesn't happen. Or maybe it's just because they included the word strike and they know I'm a filthy socialist. That could be it too. Anyways, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Gumi Economics. I know this series can be a lot more dry than the rest of it, and it doesn't really teach you how to be better at playing video games, but nevertheless, I appreciate you tuning in. And remember that the free-to-play option for YouTube is to like and subscribe. Also, leave me delicious, delicious comments for me to chew up and spit out to the algorithm so I can feed it like I'm baby birding it, just vomiting your comments back into its mouth for more views. Gross. But in addition to that, I have a link in the description where you can support the channel by sending donations, checking out my other online ways of communicating with the world, my main channel, my Spotify account, all of those things. You can subscribe, you can like, you can do all those things there. There's also ways to support the channel monetarily, either with a one-time donation or recurring donations. If you want to send like $1 a month, that is greatly appreciated. Every little bit helps. But also, I am a fiction writer. I do write books. Specifically, if you're watching this type of content, maybe you'd be interested in a book that was based on a tabletop campaign that I played in a game that I designed myself. And then I kind of recorded the experiences of my players playing through it and novelized it. I thought that was pretty cool. That book is called Athena's Chosen. And the follow-up to it was also written in the same way. So, interesting set of stories if you're into this type of stuff. But with all that being said, thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.